Clara Foster sat alone in the living room, staring out of the window as the rain fell steadily against the glass. The room was dim, the only light coming from the soft glow of the table lamp in the corner. It had been a long day, but Clara's mind was restless, filled with thoughts of her daughter, Ella. The quiet of the evening only seemed to intensify her feelings of regret. It was as though the sound of the rain echoed in her heart, a constant reminder of the years she had lost with her daughter. When Ella was younger, the house was always filled with laughter. She had been a bright, curious child with a mind full of questions and a heart full of dreams. But over the years, something had changed. The energy that once filled their home had faded, replaced by an uncomfortable silence between mother and daughter. Clara closed her eyes, thinking back to the days when Ella was a child. She had been determined to be the best mother, always making sure her daughter had the best toys, the nicest clothes, and the finest schools. She had sacrificed so much of herself, putting aside her dreams, in order to give Ella the life she thought she deserved. But in her pursuit of providing everything, Clara hadn't realized that what her daughter needed most wasn't things. It was her time, her love, her attention. Clara glanced over at the photo on the mantel, a picture of Ella when she was 6, holding a bouquet of dandelions and smiling brightly. It seemed so far away now. Ella was 18 now, a young woman on the brink of adulthood, and yet Clara felt like she had missed so many moments with her. The realization weighed heavily on her heart. The first sign that something was wrong came when Ella was just 5 years old. It was a chilly fall afternoon, and Clara was sitting at the kitchen table, finishing up some paperwork for work. Ella had been unusually quiet that day, not running around or talking as she usually did. Clara looked up from her work when she heard the soft sound of footsteps and saw Ella standing at the door of the kitchen, her little face looking more serious than usual. "Mom, can we talk?" Ella asked, her voice small and hesitant. Clara smiled, brushing her hair out of her face. "Of course, sweetie. What's on your mind?" Ella walked up to her, her eyes wide and searching. "You never play with me anymore. You're always working, or when you're home, you're busy doing something else. I miss you." Clara's smile faltered. She hadn't realized how much her daughter had noticed. "I'm sorry, honey. I'm just trying to make sure we have everything we need. You know, clothes, food, all that stuff." Ella nodded, but there was sadness in her eyes. "I know, Mom, but I want you. I don't want all the stuff. I just want you." The words hit Clara harder than she had expected. She knew she loved her daughter more than anything, but she had been so focused on providing, on making sure Ella had everything she needed, that she hadn't realized her daughter just wanted her presence, her time. From that moment on, Clara tried to balance her work and home life better. She would come home from work early, spend time playing games with Ella, or go on walks in the park. But no matter how much she tried, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something had been lost. The bond between them was never quite the same, and as Ella grew older, it only seemed to stretch farther apart. By the time Ella was a teenager, the distance between them had only grown. At first, Clara had hoped that as Ella matured, they would find their way back to each other. But Ella became more withdrawn, spending long hours in her room or hanging out with friends. She no longer came to her mother with the same excitement about her day, nor did she ask Clara to help with her homework or listen to her dreams. The teenage years were a difficult time, and Clara had tried to reach out, but every attempt seemed to fall short. One evening, after Clara had returned home late from a meeting, she found Ella sitting at the kitchen table, looking down at her phone. There was a quiet tension in the air. Clara hesitated before walking over. "Ella, honey, how was school today?" Clara asked, trying to sound casual. Ella didn't look up. "Fine," she muttered. Clara sat down across from her, searching for a way to break through the wall between them. "I was thinking, maybe we could go out this weekend, just the two of us. Get some lunch, maybe see a movie." Ella glanced at her briefly, her face expressionless. "I don't know. I'm probably hanging out with Lucy and Mia." Clara tried to hide the disappointment that crept into her chest. "Okay. Well, I just wanted to spend some time with you." Ella shrugged, her eyes returning to her phone. "Sure." Clara sat there for a few moments, the words from that conversation echoing in her mind. It wasn't just that Ella didn't want to spend time with her. It was the coldness in her tone, the disconnection. It was as though they were two strangers sitting in the same room. The final blow came one winter afternoon when Clara arrived home to find a letter on the kitchen table. It was from Ella. With a feeling of dread creeping over her, Clara opened the envelope and began to read. "Mom, I know you love me, but I can't keep pretending that everything is fine between us. For years, you've been more focused on your job and your meetings than on me. You've always been there, physically, but you've never really been here for me emotionally. I've tried to get your attention, but you're always too busy or too tired. I've learned to live without you, and I don't think I need to anymore. I don't know what to do, but I can't keep feeling invisible in my own home. I just need space. Maybe we can figure things out later, but for now, I need to take a step back. Love, Ella." Clara sat down in shock, the letter trembling in her hands. Her eyes blurred with tears as the weight of her daughter's words sank in. Ella had asked for space. The girl she had carried for 9 months, the child she had held in her arms, had reached out and said she didn't need her anymore. The regret that Clara felt at that moment was suffocating. She had failed as a mother in the most heartbreaking way possible. The weeks that followed were filled with an overwhelming sense of loss. Clara tried to reach out to Ella in any way she could. She would leave notes in Ella's room, telling her how much she loved her and how sorry she was. She would call, but Ella never answered, or if she did, the conversations were brief, with a forced politeness. One evening, as Clara sat in the living room, staring at the picture of Ella as a young child on the mantelpiece, the doorbell rang. Clara jumped to her feet, her heart racing. She opened the door to find Ella standing there, looking as though she had been waiting for the right moment to speak. "Mom," Ella said, her voice soft. "Can we talk?" Clara's heart skipped a beat. "Of course, sweetie. Come in." They sat down in the living room, the silence between them heavy and awkward. Finally, Clara spoke, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry, Ella. I can't take back what I've done, but I'm so sorry. I've been selfish, and I never realized how much I was hurting you. I was so focused on my job and everything else that I forgot what really mattered. You matter. You've always mattered." Ella looked at her mother for a long time, her face unreadable. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Mom. I've spent so many years feeling like I wasn't important to you, like you didn't care. But I don't want to hate you either. I don't know." Clara's chest tightened. I know I've made mistakes, and I don't expect everything to be okay right away. But I'm here, and I'll always be here, whenever you're ready." Ella nodded slowly, and for the first time in a long while, Clara saw a flicker of warmth in her daughter's eyes. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. It was a glimmer of hope. The next few months were filled with small steps forward. Clara continued to reach out, trying to show Ella that she was committed to being a better mother. But it wasn't easy. Ella still spent most of her time with friends, and when she did spend time with Clara, there was always a distance between them. One evening, when Ella was back from college for the summer, Clara decided to take a chance. She made dinner and set the table with candles, hoping for a quiet, meaningful conversation. When Ella sat down, Clara spoke. "Ella, I know we're not where we want to be. I know things aren't perfect, but I want to try if you do. Can we start fresh? No more pretending everything is fine when it's not. Let's talk, really talk." Ella looked at her mother, and for the first time in years, there was a softness in her gaze. "I don't know, Mom, but maybe we can try." The weeks following their first honest conversation were filled with a mixture of small victories and setbacks. Clara tried not to expect too much too soon, but every moment she shared with Ella was bittersweet. They still had a long way to go. Sometimes the silence was comfortable, but at other times it was suffocating. One late afternoon, Clara found herself at the kitchen table sipping her tea. She glanced at the clock. Nearly 6 o'clock. Ella was due back from a weekend trip with friends, and the house felt unusually empty without her presence. Clara had spent the day cleaning, organizing, and trying to maintain a sense of order, but something felt different this time. The weight of their past hung in the air, but so did the possibility of change. As if on cue, Clara heard the front door open, followed by the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Ella appeared in the doorway, her backpack slung over her shoulder. "Hey," Ella said, her tone neutral, but not cold. There was no longer the sharp edge of indifference, but the cautious distance that remained between them was evident. Clara smiled, her heart swelling with an unfamiliar warmth. "Hey, sweetie, How was the trip? Ella shrugged, setting her bag down. It was good. Just hung out with Lucy and Mia. We went to that new cafe in town, you know, the one by the bookshop. Clara's eyes softened. Sounds nice. I'm glad you had fun. For a moment, there was an awkward silence as Clara wondered if she should say more. She wanted to bridge the gap between them, but she was aware of how fragile their conversations had become. She didn't want to push too hard. Want some dinner? Clara asked, breaking the silence. I made lasagna. Ella hesitated before nodding. Yeah, sure. That sounds good. As Clara set the table, she found herself stealing glances at her daughter. She noticed how much Ella had changed. There were more grown-up lines on her face now, and her eyes held a depth that reminded Clara how much time had passed. Ella was no longer the child who needed constant guidance. She was a young woman who was carving out her own path. Still, Clara couldn't stop wishing that there was more time to make up for the years they'd lost. They ate together in a comfortable quiet, but there was something different about this dinner. No longer just an awkward exchange. This moment felt like a tentative beginning, a chance to reset. So, Clara began, after a few bites. How's school going? How are your classes? Ella looked up, her expression more open than before. It's okay. Some of my professors are a little intense, but it's not too bad. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do after graduation. I was thinking about doing something with writing, maybe journalism. Clara's heart lifted. She had always known Ella had a writing talent, but she hadn't known her daughter was considering it seriously. I think that's a great idea. You've always had such a way with words. Ella smiled slightly, the first genuine smile Clara had seen in months. Thanks, Mom. I'm still figuring it all out, but I'll figure it out eventually. Clara leaned back in her chair, absorbing the moment. The conversation wasn't full of declarations or deep emotional confessions, but it was real. They were talking again, not just about surface-level things, but about Ella's future, her hopes, and her uncertainties. It was a step forward. Clara had come to realize that love couldn't always be fixed in a moment. It wasn't about grand gestures or apologies. It was about the quiet, everyday effort to show up for each other. And for the first time in years, Clara felt hopeful. It wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild what had been broken.